Hey y'all, it's Diana in the Dyebaths, and I'm here to present the October podcast for our Slow Textiles month of October. Um, since we are in October, it is Halloween, or in, I tend to celebrate the Samhain aspect of it, being of Northern European, specifically Scottish descent. And this is kind of where Halloween comes from, is this part of the world. So before I dive into the textiles for this month, I'm going to talk just a little bit about some Samhain folklore. So in the British Isles, specifically Ireland and Scotland, there was an old woman who was the goddess archetype, and she goes back way before Christianity, before the Celtic traditions moved in. At least that's what people think. They're still doing a lot of archaeology in that part of the world, but the Cailleach, she was the old woman. She was the creator myth from that part of the world. She would wake up at Samhain, that's the beginning of the new year for those parts of the world. It's kind of Ireland, Scotland, all those little islands that are all around there. And she was a fearsome giant. She was blue. She had one eye in the middle of her head, and she had a big club that she would wake up and she would travel around with, smashing into everything, rearranging the hills and the rivers and the lochs and the water. And this was to renew the land, so that by the time you get to Beltane, when she's ready to go back to sleep, she would have rearranged things so that the land was fertile again. You know, if you're grazing animals, you're growing crops, the land could use some refreshment. And actually the winter is good for that, as much as the winter might be hard and cold and wet, and at least in that part of the world. All those things come together to compost and to move things so the water flows better or whatever. So this is part of the mythology. And so yes, the winter would have been something to be feared because it was cold, and hopefully your crops did well and your animals did well, you have enough to eat, you're warm enough. But it would also typically be the time of year when people might pass away because of old age or illness. It's always accentuated in the winter. Of course, nowadays, most of us have it a little easier. We have climate control in our houses, right, and global food distribution. But honoring these cycles of life is something that I really enjoy personally. And so this is one of my favorite times of the year, when the Cailleach wakes up. So while I was traveling in Scotland last May, I saw some of the sites where you could say the old woman is sleeping during her summer nap. I was at the Callander Stones, the stone circles there. There's several sites with several circles in that area, and Callanish is the biggest and arguably the best preserved. They're making it into the it's been taken over by it's being run from this point forward, maybe from the Scottish, I can't think of the name right now, but the group that's preserving a lot of the sites, because over tourism. And so it's quite accessible and well preserved, and you can walk in amongst the stones. And as you look out from the center of the circle across towards the mountains in front of you, you can see what looks like an old woman or a woman sleeping there. And they call her the Old Woman of the Moors. And I'll post a picture here of that. And so that was very exciting for me. That was fun. I am going to make a mini cairn. There is a cairn in the glen, one of the glens that I've wanted to hike to. It's like a 10-mile hike, and I'm not sure if I can hike 10 miles these days. It's been on my list. Still tended. The site has a cairn, and there are 3 figures, and it's supposed to be the kayak and her husband and a child, and they bring the figures out in the spring after the winter, and then they close the cairn back up. And it's kind of a heritage site, so maybe over tourism of that is not great. In any case, I'm making my own little mini cairn here for Samhain, and I'm gonna write out some things from last year that I'm letting go of. We'll put that in there, close it up for the winter, such as winter is in Florida. It's humid enough, it will be absorbed back into the earth here. So, and then I will close that cairn up, and I'm gonna do a little reopening home ceremony in the spring at Beltane to open the energy back up. There's a lot of interesting folklore around the kayak and her different cycles of the year in Scotland, and you can look around YouTube and find lots of that. I'm not going to go too deep into that. This is our fiber thing, and I've already gone on a big tangent. All right. I like to bring a little culture in, and I hope you all enjoy it too, hearing some folklore. I'm also into herbalism, and let me know below if you enjoy me sticking some of that into these podcasts, or if you would rather I just stay on topic with the fibers. I probably can't help myself, but putting some of that in there, but people don't seem to like if I digress too far into too many subjects. So back to the fibers. This month, what have I been up to? So I worked with a couple of plants, actually 3 to be exact. Actually a little more as we get into modifications, because I'm going to go into modifications today. So you've done your nice dye bath with whatever plant you chose. What I worked with was, I'm just going to pick it up here, Coreopsis. So my first run with the Coreopsis, and if you can get, here, let me not put the tag, Coreopsis tinctoria. Let me see if the lighting, because it looks darker than it's looking on my phone. Anyway, Coreopsis tinctoria. Grew well out west, the Seattle area. I think it's native to Texas. It's been growing well for me in Florida. So this is a plant that's very adaptable, can grow all over, has bright yellow flowers. I have shown it in previous videos. I think some people call it tickweed, like a common name. But Coreopsis you find that very commonly in seed catalogs. So this was a cotton thread that this was my first run. So I got this nice dark, I'm trying to get it where the light, it's more orangey than it looks on my camera. So I don't know what it looks like on your screen. Anyway, that was the first run with the cotton. I also did, that's showing up a little better, the silk. I have silk ribbon, and that's what I've been tying my hair with because the elastics aren't that great on the ends of my hair. And I can dye all this silk and have fun wearing ribbon that I've dyed myself. So you only need a tiny bit of dye stuff to do these little ribbons. So that can be a fun addition to the pot if you have longer hair. And then, which I didn't have a giant amount of Coreopsis. In general, you want the same weight of flowers as you have for your fibers. I'm going to go more into basics of dyeing maybe in November in a future podcast. But I went way overboard and I did this big old hunk of cotton because I want to make this pair of pants. And I hope you can see it. It's a pastel orange, which I actually really love. I love pastel colors. But this was a very big piece for the small amount of dye stuff that I had. So it did come out quite light. I'm happy with it. Normally I would advise not putting quite so much fabric compared to how many flowers I had. So that was a dye that I did pretty much straight up, right? I've got my mordants on first you scour whatever you're gonna dye, whether it's wool, silk, or cotton or other fibers. Then I mordanted it. This particular one, I did what I generally do. I do alum for the cotton, don't so much need cream of tartar, and salt. Salt helps open fibers up. It's not technically a mordant, but it kind of opens fibers up. and helps them, you know, if they're more open, they can accept the dye a little better. Okay, and then that brings me to the main dyeing project that I did this month, and that was with some dried tansy that I had brought with me, and I should have taken a picture of the tansy so that you could see it. It's a very recognizable plant. You can look it up online. Be careful you're not looking at tansy ragwort, which is a completely different species of plant. The similarity is they sort of look alike unless you are used to looking at plants, and you can totally see the difference. You can make a dye with tansy ragwort. I have done it. It's not as orangey. It's a more yellow kind of dye, and also it can create a lot of allergies for people. Some people are very sensitive to the sap, so I would wear gloves when picking the tansy ragwort if you decide to try that out. But what I used this month was dried actual garden tansy that I had collected and dried. And some dried plants make excellent dyes, so I highly encourage that. So I only had so much of it, and it won't grow here, so at least I haven't been able to get it grow here. So I really wanted to make as much use out of this bath as I could. Now this was my first run with the tansy. It's beautiful, bright, clear yellow. And this is on wool, so this I add cream of tartar because as you start altering pH or adding modifiers, it can be a little harsh on the wool. You know, if you think of like over processing your hair, similar kind of concept. So the cream of tartar helps protect and keep it a little softer. You never want to push the pH too far in either direction because it will at some point kind of harm your fiber. And then you generally do 50-gram hanks of wool. This would have been, this is the next color, but you know, I start out with wool like this generally, and then this I've already gotten around to spinning. So I wanted to extend this bath since this was all that I had. So what I did was I added onion skin. I save my dried onion skins in paper bags. You need a fair amount to actually get a color. Like, it's not going to be from 2 onions. You're going to want like, you know, 20 onion skins from 20 different onions. So I just kind of collect them, and they're off in a corner on the back porch in paper bags. But got a beautiful kind of orange tone to this. And this came out so nicely that I was like, let me keep going, right? So I decided to see how far can I push this bath. And we went from this, and the next skein I put in actually came out much darker, which isn't showing up the best on the camera. I don't know if you can tell that this one is darker, like this first exhaust. We call it an exhaust bath when you've done your primary dyeing and now you're just seeing like what more color you can get out. My first dye bath picked up more of the yellow from the tansy, and here the tansy is exhausting and I'm getting more of the onion skin. It was still a really nice dark color, so I said, let me keep going, right? So 3 times. Okay, so this was my next exhaust. This is 50 grams. I weigh them out. I like having a consistent size. It makes it easier to measure, you know, for when I'm doing the alum and the powders. And when I want to go back and compare, I have a pretty good idea because I know how much material I had. So that still looked pretty good. So I thought, well, what else can I do? How else can I play with this bath? So I decided to add a little bit of madder. Now madder, generally, now this bath at this point was a little bit acidic from the onion skins. I measure it, pH papers. So you can get these on Amazon real easy. Comes in a roll like this. You just tear off a little piece, you stick it in your dye bath. It's going to change color, They got a chart. You can see where that falls on your chart, compare the color, and then you know where your pH is. So this was just a little bit acidic. It was like maybe 5. Didn't want to focus there. Anyway, so for madder, traditionally madder you do with a more basic pH, more alkaline. I started out with some calcium carbonate. I got this from Botanical Colors. I really like them as a supply house for all things dye because they're very ethical in how they procure and make sure people are getting fair trade. And they have a great selection. They're a fairly small business, so they are a little more expensive than the bigger places. But I've taken workshops with them. They do that out of their space in Seattle. And they're just really great people, and I like them. The other company that I like to use is Dharma Trading, and they have all kinds of things for dyes too. They're in San Francisco. You can get things in bigger amounts, like pounds of things. This is soda ash, which I moved to because when I did the calcium carbonate with the madder, I wasn't getting a whole lot of pH shift. So I wanted to take it up to about a 9. I don't like to go over 9 because it starts to be harsh on your material. But at 9, you will definitely see a difference. Or if I'm going acidic the other way, maybe 4 or 5. So since I wasn't getting a lot of the calcium carbonate, what I did was I added soda ash, which you only need a tiny amount. I put like a teaspoon in there and it was totally at 9. So I will mix this in a jar that's dedicated to that. All of your equipment, by the way, when you're playing with these things, they're chemistry, right? This is basically kind of like lye, soda ash. So you use it a lot in dyes, but you don't want to use that in your things that you're going to be eating out of and preparing food out of. So you can get this stuff at like garage sales, thrift stores, old spoons and pots and cups and measuring cups and things. And then I just dedicate those to the dye process. So it's a totally separate set of things that lives in a box with my dye stuff. So I decided to add a little bit of soda ash to get a little bit more alkalinity out, and then I got a nice color shift. Didn't get the kind of red I would have expected from my madder. Hold on. So here is my madder powder, and this is madder that I collected when I used to work at Beacon Food Forest, and I don't know if those plants are still there because I don't know if everybody else knew what they were. That's the thing in a public garden. Sometimes things get lost because nobody knew what they were. But collected and ground this myself. So it's kind of like my precious, right? Because I can't get that all the time. I am trying to grow madder here, which normally you would think it might be a good environment, but the yard dragons like it, so it's not getting to grow a whole heck of a lot, and I might not get very much out of that, which is sad. Anyway, so I'm very frugal in how I use that madder when I'm doing my dyes. So I wasn't super excited to get more red, but I did get color, so all good. Another thing about madder is that you can never exhaust it, really. You just keep dyeing things and you just keep getting some kind of color. So I put in the exhaust of the tansy to the onion skin to the madder, and I'm getting a pretty pale color now, but I am still getting a color, and madder has like a clear color, what we would call a clear color. So that means that it's a definite color. It doesn't become a muddy, like browny kind of thing, really. You still get like a definite color, not like people call it old lady underpants color, where it's just kind of grayish, brownish. So this is okay. I did 2 skeins like this, and then I'm like, I don't know if I need tons of this color. I might use this in my tapestry weaving for like a flesh tone. That would work. Don't know how many figurative tapestries I'm gonna really do. So I may put it in a jar and save it for a while until I get inspired to use it for something more, because I hate to throw it out. It's still making color, but matter, gosh, it just keeps going and going and going. And then you want to do something else, right? I want to play with something new. This is somebody gave me, my friend Sue Hopkins gave me, it's called lawnmower wool, she was calling it, because she got it from somebody who had sheep that were just kept on their property to keep the grass down, and they didn't think it was fantastic wool, I guess. I think it's great. This is like perfect for, if I can find an end, for the tapestry weaving, because it creates like a nice dense, I can't find an end. You have to run the drum carder to loosen it a little before you try to spin it, but well, it just makes a really nice, thin but compact kind of string. Like, you wouldn't want to make a scarf out of that. It's not real scratchy, but it's just not your nice fluffy merino or something. But it's great for something like a rug or tapestry where you want a more compacted kind of wool that really holds its shape. I think it's great. I wish I had more of it. So when you're working with these dyes, and maybe you're putting in some powders like soda ash or alum, or you know, the different things that you use, I highly recommend using gloves, keeping your skin protected. Like I said, the soda ash can be extremely alkaline. You know, it's almost like a lye, so you can feel like, because do as I like try to teach you, don't do as I do, because I've developed really bad habits when I was in art school of sticking my hands in things without protection. And you can feel the slipperiness, and I'm like, oh, I should be wearing gloves. And I'm trying to retrain myself to be more safe with my process. It's not badass to be destroying your skin or breathing in powder. So the other thing that's good to use is some kind of particulate mask when you're like putting in the powders and stuff, because you don't really want to be breathing that stuff into your lungs. We want to make beauty, but we still want to take care of ourselves, right? So to recap kind of the projects I did this month, I did the Coreopsis. So we had cotton string, silk ribbon, cotton fabric that made this beautiful pastel. And then I worked with the, that was Coreopsis, and then I worked with the tansy and got bright yellow. Added onion skin, extended the bath. Next bath, picked up more of the yellow. Then we got more orange, and then more exhaust. We got a lighter, this is an orangey yellow. It's looking more yellow on the camera. And then we added, this one actually was where I added the madder, the one that's a little orangier. And then we shifted the pH to more basic and got more of a pale, kind of orangey, fleshy color, which, you know, cameras just don't do them justice when you're trying to explain. And so basically we just added some more of different similar plant material that had some similar color qualities. And so that was able to extend the dye bath and continue to dye more skeins of wool. And then started shifting the pH as we added like the madder that I know wants a more basic pH to show up as a dye. So that's where we made the bath more alkaline. All right, hope this was useful information. So the other wool that I have to show you is I finally finished drum carding the wood from last year, now that it's about time to start wood for this year. And so that came out quite beautifully on the drum carder, fluffy, ready to spin. Now this is a fluffy wool, so this is like this was Columbia or Falkland, I can't remember. I have to get better at making the tags as I go along, like writing the new information as I go along, so I don't forget what they are by the time they're all rinsed and dried. But it was definitely the load, and either Columbia or Falkland, because those were the two I was working with. So that's a wrap from last year. Sometimes it's a whole process, you know, when you're like making these wools, and then I haven't even gotten to like spinning this and maybe possibly blending it with another color, right? It can be a fun process. I have fun with it, and I enjoy when I get my final results, but I also enjoy all the steps along the way to get there, and you kind of can do them little by little, hopefully keeping better notes than I do at each step of the way so you don't forget what you did. All right. Now I wanted to give you an update on how my cotton spinning is coming along, and I also wanted to show you, maybe I can back up a little, my beautiful antique wool, not wool, it's a linen, okay, I'm not saying that very well, my antique Saxony flax wheel that I got at an estate sale from, I'm gonna guess, a fiber artist that passed away, because they had all kinds of fiber related things that were for sale all at once. That was in Tacoma, and I got a great deal on it, of course. I was going to show you, now equipment will last you about forever if you take care of it well. So you can kind of see where maybe it had been sitting in the garage for a little while and hadn't been really being taken care of, like just getting dusty, wood getting a little dry, and you can see where I've started conditioning it with some nice wax polish. So I used this Ashford finishing wax polish that's made for like looms and spinning wheels and things. It's supposed to be good for the wood. So everywhere that I've started buffing it up, it's just starting to shine and really look like a beautiful thing. They used to use like odds and ends of wood to make things, so it's kind of funny, like you see things that it's like that wouldn't have been in a like fine piece of furniture, but for a spinning wheel, nice piece of wood. You can even see where there's like wormholes in the wood, but they were able to make this bobbin out of it. Now I did have some fun because, one, I wasn't paying attention. The cotton is spinning up very nicely. I have this double tie up on the flyer, and I feel like I don't have that laced quite correctly. So if you know anything about these kind of wheels and have suggestions, I would totally appreciate it. All the ones I've seen online, they have the hooks are on the same side of the flyer, whereas this one, the hooks on the other end are on the other side of the flyer, and so I'm ending up with the lacing like actually going across. Oops, it's on the other side, I guess. But it's going across my yarn as I spin, and it's working, but it's also creating friction as it goes on there, so I don't feel like that's probably the way it's supposed to be. Fortunately, I no longer have a guild over here on the East Coast to run to with questions, so I'm trying to figure that out. If you have suggestions, we'd totally love that. But you can see how well the cotton is coming out. I watched all these videos online about how to spin the cotton, and I wanted to use the double flyer, lacing up the hooks, because you get a longer pathway to the bobbin, and that's supposed to help with the twist so that you can spin thinner without over twisting so much. I'm finding after all those videos I watched, I'm just pretty much spinning it the same way I do with wool. That's working for me pretty well. Anyway, this just a little show around the antique wheel that I got, and an update on the cotton that I'm spinning at the same time. So to wrap up this episode, I am going to talk a little bit about my process with indigo. I will insert a picture here of the plant. Note that I will very soon have seeds to sell, very fresh indigo seeds. If you've tried to order indigo seeds, you know that you often get things people repackage from overseas that are old and you get very low germination. So these are fresh seeds. Hopefully they would germinate well for you. It is a subtropical plant, so better. It has a long growing season. Can grow it as an annual or if you have a greenhouse. But this is the final water bath here. You know, I've already strained it. You can see the nice indigo that's separating out of the solution. I used soda ash because I found video online that that's what they were doing, and it is separating out incredibly slowly. My family is complaining quite a bit about the scent of this in the bathroom where I'm working on it because it had fermented in the beginning and the flies really enjoyed it, so I had to bring it in the house. But I have since purchased the calcium hydroxide as a Facebook group. There's an indigo Facebook group, and they suggested that it will separate it out much quicker. I think it adds a little to the process because then you have to wash your final product a bit to get that back out of there, but hopefully that will speed things up. I will update again a little further down the line, but I'm very excited to try out this homegrown indigo powder. I have to say I really love the process of doing something from seed to a actual like product, you know, the yarn or a project. It takes a long time, but there's a real sense of satisfaction with slow textiles. So with that, if you want to know more